9. At noon, we were stuck in Muddy Road about, as nearly as we could figure, 10 kilometers from Udine. The rain had stopped during the forenoon, and 3 times we had heard planes coming, seen them pass overhead, watched them go far to the left, and heard them bombing on the main high road. We had worked through a network of secondary roads and had taken many roads that were blind, but had always, by backing up and finding another road, gotten closer to Udine. Now Amo's car is backing so that we might get out of a blind road. Had gotten into the soft earth at the side and the wheels spinning, had dug deeper and deeper until the car rested on its differential. The thing to do now was to dig out in front of the wheels, put in brush so that the chains could grip, and then push until the car was on the road. We were all down on the road around the car. The 2 sergeants looked at the car and examined the wheels. Then they started off down the road without a word. I went after them. "Come on," I said. "Cut some brush." "We have to go," one said. "Get busy," I said, "and cut brush." "We have to go," one said. The other said nothing. They were in a hurry to start. They would not look at me. "I order you to come back to the car and cut brush," I said. The 1 sergeant turned. "We have to go on. In a little while, you will be cut off. You can't order us. You're not our officer." "I order you to cut brush," I said. They turned and started down the road. "Halt," I said. They kept on down the muddy road, the hedge on either side. "I order you to halt," I called. They went a little faster. I opened up my holster, took a pistol, aimed at the one who had talked the most, and fired. I missed, and they both started to run. I shot 3 times and dropped one. The other went through the hedge and was out of sight. I fired at him through the hedge as he ran across the field. Pistol clicked empty, and I put in another clip. I saw it was too far to shoot at the 2nd sergeant. He was far across the field, running, his head low. I commenced to reload the empty clip. Vanilla came up. "Let me go finish him," he said. I handed him the pistol, and he walked down to where the sergeant of engineers lay face down across the road. Vanilla leaned over, put the pistol against the man's head, and pulled the trigger. The pistol did not fire. "You have to cock it," I said. He cocked it and fired twice. I took hold of the sergeant's legs and pulled him to the side of the road, so he lay beside the hedge. He came back and handed me the pistol. "The son of a bitch," he said. He looked toward the sergeant. "You see me shoot him, Tenente?" "We've got to get the brush quickly," I said. "Did I hit the other one at all?" "I don't think so," Amo said. "He was too far away to hit the pistol." "The dirty scum," Piani said. We were all cutting twigs and branches. Everything had been taken out of the car. Benello was digging out in front of the wheels. When we were ready, Amo started the car and put it into gear. The wheels spun round, throwing brush and mud. Benello and I pushed until we could feel our joints crack. The car would not move. Rock her back and forth, Bartow, I said. He drove the engine in reverse, then forward. The wheels only dug in deeper. Then the car was resting on the differential again, and the wheels spun freely in the holes they had dug. I straightened up. We'll try her with a rope, I said. I don't think it's any use, Tenente. You can't get a straight pull. We have to try it, I said. She won't come out any other way. Piani's and Benello's scars could only move straight ahead down the narrow road. We roped both cars could only move straight ahead down the narrow road. We roped both cars together and pulled. The wheels only pulled sideways against the ruts. It's no good, I shouted. Stop it. Piani and Benello got down from their cars and came back. Amo got down. The girls were up the road about 40 yards, sitting on a stone wall. What do you say, Tenente? Benello asked. We'll dig out and try once more with the brush, I said. I looked down the road. It was my fault. I had led them up here. The sun was almost out from behind the clouds, and the body of the sergeant lay beside the hedge. We'll put his coat and cape under, I said. Nella went to get them. I cut brush, and Amo and Piani dug out in front and between the wheels. I cut the cape, then ripped it in two, and laid it under the wheel in the mud, then piled brush for the wheels to catch. We were ready to start, and Amo got up on the seat and started the car. The wheels spun, and we pushed and pushed, but it wasn't any use. It's blanked, I said. Is there anything you want in the car, Bartow? Amo climbed up with Benello, carrying the cheese and 2 bottles of wine and his cape. Benello, sitting behind the wheel, was looking through the pockets of the sergeant's coat. Better throw the coat away, I said. What about Bartow's virgins? They can get in the back, Piani said. I don't think we are going far. I opened the back door of the ambulance. Come on, I said. Get in. The 2 girls climbed in and sat in the corner. They seemed to have taken no notice of the shooting. I looked back up the road. The sergeant lay in his dirty, long-sleeved underwear. I got up with Piani and we started. We were going to try to cross the field. When the road entered the field, I got down and walked ahead. If we could get across, there was a road on the other side. We could not get across. I was too soft and muddy. It was too soft and muddy for the cars. When they were finally and completely stalled, the wheels dug into the hubs. We left them in the field and started on foot for Udine. When we came to the road, which led back toward the main highway, I pointed down it to the girls. You go down there, I said. You'll meet people. They looked at me. I took out my pocketbook and gave them each a 10-lira note. Go down there, I said, pointing. Friends, family. They did not understand, but they held the money tightly and started down the road. They looked back as though they were afraid I might take the money back. I watched them go down the road, their shawls close around them, looking back apprehensively at us. The 3 drivers were laughing. How much will you give me to go in that direction, Tenente? Vanilla asked. They're better off in a bunch of people than alone if they catch them, I said. Give me 200 lyre, and I'll walk straight back toward Austria, Benello said. They'd take it away from you, Piani said. Maybe the war will be over, Amo said. We were going up the road as fast as we could. The sun was trying to come through. Beside the road were mulberry trees. Through the trees, I could see our two big vans, big moving vans of cars stuck in the field. Piani looked back too. We'll have to build a road to get them out, he said. I wish to Christ we had bicycles, Vanilla said. Do they ride bicycles in America? Amo asked. They used to. Here it is a great thing, Amo said. A bicycle is a splendid thing. Wish to Christ we had bicycles, Vanilla said. I'm no walker. Is that firing? I asked. I thought I could hear firing a long way away. I don't know, Amo said. He listened. I think so. I said. The first thing we will see will be the cavalry, Piani said. I don't think they've got any cavalry. Hope to Christ not, Vanilla said. I don't want to be stuck on a lance by any blank cavalry. You certainly shot that sergeant, Tenente, Piani said. We were walking fast. I killed him, Vanilla said. I never killed anybody in this war, and all my life I've wanted to kill a sergeant. You killed him on the sit, all right, Piani said. He wasn't flying very fast when you killed him. Never mind. That's one thing I can always remember. I killed that blank of a sergeant. What will you say in confession? Amo asked. I'll say, bless me, father. I killed a sergeant. They all laughed. He's an anarchist, Piani said. He doesn't go to church. Piani's an anarchist too, Benevo said. Are you really anarchists? I asked. No, Tenente. We're socialists. We come from Imola. Haven't you ever been there? No. By Christ, it's a fine place, Tenente. You come there after the war, and we'll show you something. Are you all socialists? Everybody. Is it a fine town? Wonderful. You never saw a town like that. How did you get to be socialists? We're all socialists. Everybody is a socialist. We've always been socialists. You come, Tenente. We'll make you a socialist too. Ahead, the road turned off to the left, and there was a little hill, and beyond, a stone wall, an apple orchard. And beyond a stone wall, an apple orchard. As the road went uphill, they ceased talking. We walked along together, all going fast against time. It doesn't sound bad. He's had two mics going. Probably it will. Chapter 30. Later, later, we were on a road that led to a river. There was a long line of abandoned trucks and carts on the road leading up to the bridge. No one was in sight. The river was high, and the bridge had been blown up in the center. The stone arch was fallen into the river, and the brown water was going over it. We went on up the bank, looking for a place to cross. Up ahead, I knew there was a railway bridge, and I thought we might be able to get across it there. The path was wet and muddy. We did not see any troops, only abandoned trucks and stores. Along the river bank, there was nothing, and no one, but the wet brush and muddy ground. We went up to the bank, and finally we saw the railway bridge. "What a beautiful bridge," Aimo said. It was a long, plain iron bridge across what was usually a dry riverbed. "We'd better hurry and get across before they blow it up," I said. "There's nobody to blow it up," Piani said. "They're all gone." "It's probably mined," Benello said. "You cross first, Tenente." "Listen to the anarchist," Aimo said. "Make him go first." "I'll go," I said. "It won't be mined to blow up with one man." "You see," Piani said. "That is brains. Why haven't you brains, anarchist?" "If I had brains, I wouldn't be here," Benello said. "That's pretty good, Tenente," Aimo said. "That's pretty good," I said. We were close to the bridge now. The sky had clouded over again, and it was raining a little. The bridge looked long and solid. We climbed up the embankment. "Come one at a time," I said, and started across the bridge. I watched the tires and the rails for any tripwires or signs of explosive, but I saw nothing. Down below the gaps in the ties, the river ran muddy and fast. Ahead, across the wet countryside, I could see Udine in the rain. Across the bridge, I looked back. Just up the river was another bridge. As I watched, a yellow mud-colored motor car crossed it. The sides of the bridge were high, and the body of the car, once on, was out of sight. But I saw the heads of the driver, the man on the seat with him, and the two men on the rear seat. They all wore German helmets. Then the car was over the bridge and out of sight behind the trees and the abandoned vehicles on the road. I waved to Aimo, who was crossing, and to the others to come on. I climbed down and crouched beside the railway embankment. Aimo came down with me. "Did you see the car?" I asked. "No, we were watching you." A German staff car crossed on the upper bridge. "A staff car?" "Yes." Holy Mary. The others came, and we all crouched in the mud behind the embankment, looking across the rails at the bridge, the line of trees, the ditch, and the road. "Do you think we're cut off then, Tenente?" "I don't know. All I know is a German staff car went along that road." "You don't feel funny, Tenente? You haven't got strange feelings in the head?" "Don't be funny, Benello." "What about a drink?" Piani asked. If we're cut off, we might as well have a drink. He unhooked his canteen and uncorked it. Look, look, Amo said, and pointed toward the road. Along the top of the stone bridge, we could see German helmets moving. They were bent forward and moved smoothly, almost supernaturally along. As they came off the bridge, we saw them. They were bicycle troops. I saw the faces of the first two. They were ruddy and healthy looking. Their helmets came low down over their foreheads and the side of their faces. Their carbines were clipped to the frame of the bicycles. Stick bombs hung, handle down, from their belts. Their helmets and their gray uniforms were wet, and they rode easily, looking ahead into both sides. There were two, then four, in a line. In line, then two, then almost a dozen, then another dozen, then one alone. They did not talk, but we could not have heard them because of the noise from the river. They were gone out of sight up the road. Holy Mary, Amo said. They were Germans, Piani said. Those weren't Austrians. Why isn't there somebody here to stop them, I said. Why haven't they blown the bridge up? Why aren't there machine guns along this embankment? You tell us, Tenente, Benella said. I was very angry. The whole bloody thing is crazy. Down below they blow up a little bridge. Here they leave a bridge on the main road. Where is everybody? Don't they try and stop them at all? You tell us, Tenente, Benello said. I shut up. It was none of my business. All I had to do was to get to Pardenon with 3 ambulances. I failed at that. All I had to do now was get to Pordenone. I probably could not even get to Udine. The hell I couldn't. The thing to do was to be calm and not get shot or captured. Didn't you have a canteen open? I asked Beniani. He handed it to me. I took a long drink. We might as well start, I said. There's no hurry, though. Do you want to eat something? This is no place to stay, Benello said. All right, we'll start. Should we keep on this side, out of sight? We'd be better off on top. They may come along this bridge, too. We don't want them on top of us before we see them. We walked along the railroad track. On both sides of us stretched the wet plain. Ahead across the plain was the hill of Udine. The roofs fell away from the castle on the hill. We could see the campanile, and the clock tower. There were many mulberry trees in the field. Ahead I saw a place where the rails were torn up. The ties had been dug out too and thrown down the embankment. Down, down, Amo said. We dropped down beside the embankment. There was another group of bicyclists passing the road. I looked over the edge and saw them go on. They saw us, but they went on, Amo said. We'll get killed up here, Tenente, Benella said. They don't want us, I said. They're after something else. We're in more danger if they should come on us suddenly. I'd rather walk here out of sight, Benella said. All right, we'll walk along the tracks. Do you think we can get through? Amo asked. Sure. There aren't very many of them yet. We'll go through in the dark. What was that staff car doing? Christ knows, I said. We kept on up the tracks. Benello, tired of walking in the mud of the embankment, and came up with the rest of us. The railway moved south, away from the highway, now, and we could not see what passed along the road. A short bridge over a canal was blown up, but we climbed across on what was left of the span. We heard firing ahead of us. We came up on the railway beyond the canal. It went on straight toward the town across the low fields. We could see the line of the other railway ahead of us. To the north was the main road where we had seen the cyclists. To the south, there was a small branch road across the fields with thick trees on each side. I thought we had better cut to the south and work around the town that way and across country toward Campo Formio, and the main road to the Tagliamento. We could avoid the main line of the retreat by keeping to the secondary roads beyond Udine. I knew there were plenty of side roads across the plain. I started down the embankment. Come on, I said. We would make for the side road and work to the south of the town. We all started down the embankment. A shot was fired at us from the side road. The bullet went into the mud of the embankment. Go on back, I shouted. I started up the embankment, slipping in the mud. The drivers were ahead of me. I went up the embankment as fast as I could go. 2 more shots came from the thick brush, and Amo, as he was crossing the tracks, lurched, tripped, and fell face down. We pulled him down on the other side and turned him over. His head ought to be uphill, I said. Piani moved him around. He lay in the mud on the side of the embankment, his feet pointing downhill, breathing blood irregularly. The 3 of us squatted over him in the rain. He was hit low in the back of the neck, and the bullet had ranged upward and come out under his right eye. He died while I was stopping up the 2 holes. Piani laid his head down, wiped at his face with a piece of the emergency dressing, then let it alone. The blank, he said. They weren't Germans, I said. There can't be any Germans over there. Italians, Piani said, using the word as an epithet. Italiani. Benello said nothing. He was sitting beside Amo, not looking at him. Piani picked up Amo's cap, where it had rolled down the embankment, and put it over his face. He took out his canteen. Do you want a drink? Piani handed Benello the canteen. No, Benello said. He turned to me. That might have happened to any of us on the railway tracks. No, I said. It was because we started across the field. Benello shook his head. Amo's dead, he said. Who's dead next, Tenente? Where do we go now? Those were Italians that shot, I said. They weren't Germans. I suppose if they were Germans, they'd have killed all of us, Benello said. We are in more danger from Italians than Germans, I said. The rear guard are afraid of everything. The Germans know what they're after. You reason it out, Tenente, Benello said. Where do we go now? Piani asked. We better lie up someplace till it's dark. If we could get south, we'd be all right. They'd have to shoot us all to prove they were right the first time, Benella said. I'm not going to try them. We'll find a place to lie up as near to Udine as we can get, and then go through when it's dark. Let's go then, Benella said. We went down the north side of the embankment. I looked back. Amo lay in the mud with the angle of the embankment. He was quite small, and his arms were by his side. His putty wrapped legs and muddy boots together, his cap over his face. He looked very dead. It was raining. I had liked him as well as anyone I ever knew. I had his papers in my pocket and would write to his family. Ahead across the fields was a farmhouse. There were trees around it, and the farm buildings were built against the house. There was a balcony along the second floor held up by columns. We better keep a little way apart, I said. I'll go ahead. I started toward the farmhouse. There was a path across the field. Crossing the field, I did not know but that someone would fire on us from the trees near the farmhouse, or from the farmhouse itself. I walked toward it, seeing it very clearly. The balcony of the second floor merged into the barn, and there was hay coming out between the columns. The courtyard was of stone blocks, and all the trees were dripping with the rain. There was a big empty two-wheeled cart, the shafts tipped high up in the rain. I came to the courtyard, crossed it, and stood under the shelter of the balcony. The door of the house was open, and I went in. Benello and Piani came in after me. It was dark inside. I went back to the kitchen. There were ashes of a fire on the big open hearth. The pots hung over the ashes, but they were empty. I looked around, but I could not find anything to eat. We ought to lie up in the barn, I said. Do you think you could find anything to eat, Piani, and bring it up there? I'll look, Piani said. I'll look too, Benello said. All right, I said. I'll go up and look at the barn. I found a stone stairway that went up from the stable underneath. The stable smelt dry and pleasant in the rain. The cattle were all gone, probably driven off when they left. The barn was half full of hay. There were two windows in the roof. One was blocked with boards. The other was a narrow dormer window on the north side. There was a chute so that hay might be pitched down to the cattle. Beams crossed the opening down into the main floor where the hay carts drove in when the hay was hauled in to be pitched up. I heard the rain on the roof and smelled the hay, and when I went down, the clean smell of dried dung in the stable. We could pry a board loose and see out of the south window down into the courtyard. The other window looked out on the field toward the north. We could get out of either window onto the roof and down, or go down the hay chute if the stairs were impractical. It was a big barn, and we could hide in the hay if we heard anyone. It seemed like a good place. I was sure we could have gotten through to the south if they had not fired on us. It was impossible that there were Germans there. They were coming from the north and down the road from Cividale. They could not have come through from the south. The Italians were even more dangerous. They were frightened and firing on anything they saw. Last night on the retreat, we had heard that there had been many Germans in Italian uniforms mixing with the retreat in the north. I did not believe it. That was one of those things you always heard in the war. It was one of those things the enemy always did to you. You did not know anyone who went over in German uniform to confuse them. Maybe they did, but it sounded difficult. I did not believe the Germans did it. I did not believe they had to. There was no need to confuse our retreat. The size of the army and the fewness of the roads did that. Nobody gave any orders, let alone Germans. Still, they would shoot us for Germans. They shot Amo. The hay smelled good, and lying in a barn in the hay took away all the years in between. We had lain in hay and talked and shot sparrows with an air rifle when they perched in the triangle cut high up in the wall of the barn. The barn was gone now, and one year they had cut the hemlock woods, and there were only stumps, dried treetops, branches, and firewood where the woods had been. You could not go back. If you did not go forward, what happened? You never got back to Milan. And if you got back to Milan, what happened? I listened to the firing to the north toward Udine. I could hear machine gun firing. There was no shelling. That was something. They must have gotten some troops along the road. I looked down in the half-light of the hay barn and saw Piani standing on the hauling floor. He had a long sausage, a jar of something, and 2 bottles of wine under his arm. Come up, I said. There is the ladder. Then I realized that I should help him with the things and went down. I was vague in the head from lying in the hay. I had been nearly asleep. Where's Benello? I asked. I'll tell you, Piani said. He went up the ladder. Up on the hay, we sat the things down. Piani took out his knife with the corkscrew and drew the cork on a wine bottle. They have sealing wax on it, he said. It must be good. He smiled. Where's Benello? I asked. Piani looked at me. He went away, Tenente, he said. He wanted to be a prisoner. I did not say anything. He was afraid we would get killed. I held the bottle of wine and did not say anything. You see, we don't believe in war anyway, Tenente. Why didn't you go? I asked. I did not want to leave you. Where did he go? I don't know, Tenente. He went away. All right, I said. Will you cut the sausage? Piani looked at me in the half-light. I cut it while we were talking, he said. He sat in the hay and ate the sausage and drank the wine. It must have been wine they had saved for a wedding. It was so old that it was losing its color. You look out of this window, Luigi, I said. I'll go look out the other window. We had each been drinking out of one of the bottles, and I took my bottle with me and went over and lay flat on the hay and looked out the narrow window at the wet country. I do not know what I expected to see, but I did not see anything except the fields and the bare mulberry trees and the rain falling. I drank the wine, and it did not make me feel good. They had kept it too long, and it had gone to pieces and lost its quality and color. I watched it get dark outside. The darkness came very quickly. It would be a black night with the rain. When it was dark, there was no use watching anymore, so I went over to Piani. He was lying asleep, and I did not wake him, but sat down beside him for a while. He was a big man, and he slept heavily. After a while, I woke him, and we started. That was a very strange night. Do not know what I had expected. Death, perhaps, and shooting in the dark, and running. But nothing happened. We waited, lying flat beyond the ditch along the main road, while a German battalion passed. Then, when they were gone, we crossed the road and went on to the north. We were very close to Germans twice, in the rain, but they did not see us. We got past the town to the north without seeing any Italians. Then, after a while, came on the main channels of the retreat and walked all night toward the Tagliamento. I had not realized how gigantic the retreat was. The whole country was moving, as well as the army. We walked all night, making better time than the vehicles. My leg ached, and I was tired, but we made good time. It seemed so silly for Benilla to have decided to be taken prisoner. There was no danger. We had walked through 2 armies without incident. If Aimo had not been killed, there would never have seemed to be any danger. No one had bothered us when we were in plain sight along the railway. The killing came suddenly and unreasonably. I wondered where Benilla was. "How do you feel, Tenente?" Piani asked. We were going along the side of a road crowded with vehicles and troops. "Fine. I'm tired of this walking." "Well, all we have to do is walk now. We don't have to worry." Benilla was a fool. He was a fool, all right. What will you do about him, Tenente? I don't know. Can't you just put him down as taken prisoner? I don't know. You see, if the war went on, they would make bad trouble. They would make bad trouble for his family. The war won't go on, a soldier said. We're going home. The war is over. Everybody's going home. We're all going home. Come on, Tenente, Piani said. We wanted to get past them. Tenente? Who's a tenente? Abbasso gli ufficiali. Down with the officers. Piani took me by the arm. Better call you by your name, he said. They might try and make trouble. They've shot some officers. We worked up past them. I won't make a report that will make trouble for his family. I went on with our conversation. If the war is over, it makes no difference, Piani said. But I don't believe it's over. It's too good that it should be over. We'll know pretty soon, I said. I don't believe it's over. They all think it's over, but I don't believe it. Viva la passe, a soldier shouted out. We're going home. It would be fine if we all went home, Piani said. Wouldn't you like to go home? Yes. We'll never go. I don't think it's over. Andiamo a casa, a soldier shouted. They throw away their rifles, Piani said. They take them off and drop them down while they're marching. Then they shout. They ought to keep the rifles. They think if they throw away their rifles, they can't make them fight. In the dark and the rain, making our way along the side of the road, I could see that many of the troops still had their rifles. They stuck up above the capes. What brigade are you? An officer called out. Brigada di Pace, someone shouted. Peace Brigade. The officer said nothing. What does he say? What does the officer say? Down with the officer. Viva la PC. Come on, Piani said. We passed two British ambulances abandoned in the block of vehicles. They're from Gorizia, Piani said. I know the cars. They got further than we did. They started earlier. I wonder where the drivers are. Up ahead, probably. The Germans have stopped outside Udine, I said. I wonder why they don't come on. I don't know. I don't know anything about this kind of war. They have to wait for their transport, I suppose. I don't know, Piani said. Alone he was much gentler. When he was with the others, he was a very rough talker. Are you married, Luigi? You know I am married. Is that why you did not want to be a prisoner? That is one reason. Are you married, Tenente? No. Neither is Bonello. You can't tell anything by a man's being married. But I should think a married man would want to get back to his wife, I said. I would be glad to talk about wives. Yes. How are your feet? They're sore enough. Before daylight, we reached the bank of the Tagliamento and followed it down along the flooded river to the bridge, where all the traffic was crossing. They ought to be able to hold at this river, Piani said. In the dark, the flood looked high. The water swirled and it was wide. The wooden bridge was nearly 3/4 of a mile across, and the river that usually ran in narrow channels in the wide stony bed far below the bridge was close under the wooden planking. We went along the bank, and then worked our way into the crowd that were crossing the bridge. Crossing slowly in the rain, a few feet above the flood, pressed tight in the crowd, the box of an artillery caisson just ahead. I looked over the side and watched the river. Now that we could not go our own pace, I felt very tired. There was no exhilaration in crossing the bridge. I wondered what it would be like if a plane bombed it in the daytime. Piani, I said. Here I am, Tenente. He was a little ahead in the jam. No one was talking. They were all trying to get across as soon as they could, thinking only of that. We were almost across. At the far end of the bridge, there were officers and carabinieri standing on both sides flashing lights. I saw them silhouetted against the skyline. As we came close to them, I saw one of the officers point to a man in the column. A carabinieri went in after him and came out holding the man by the arm. He took him away from the road. We came almost opposite them. The officers were scrutinizing everyone in the column, sometimes speaking to each other, going forward to flash a light in someone's face. They took someone else out just before we came opposite. I saw the man. He was a lieutenant colonel. I saw the stars in the box on his sleeve as they flashed a light on him. His hair was gray, and he was short and fat. The carabinieri pulled him in behind the line of officers. As we came opposite, I saw one or two of them look at me. Then one pointed at me and spoke to a carabinieri. I saw the carabinieri start for me, come through the edge of the column toward me, then felt him take me by the collar. "What's the matter with you?" I said, and hit him in the face. I saw his face under the hat, upturned mustaches, and blood coming down his cheek. Another one drove in toward us. "What's the matter with you?" I said. He did not answer. He was watching a chance to grab me. I put my arm behind me to loosen my pistol. "Don't you know you can't touch an officer?" The other one grabbed me from behind and pulled my arm up so that it was twisted in the socket. I turned with him, and the other one grabbed me around the neck. I kicked his shins and got my left knee into his groin. "Shoot him if he resists," I heard someone say. "What's the meaning of this?" I tried to shout, but my voice was not very loud. They had me at the side of the road now. "Shoot him if he resists," an officer said. "Take him over back." "Who are you?" "You'll find out." "Who are you?" "Battle police," another officer said. "Why don't you ask me to step over instead of having one of these airplanes grab me?" They did not answer. They did not have to answer. They were battle police. "Take him back there with the others," the first officer said. "You see, he speaks Italian with an accent." "So do you, you blank," I said. "Take him back with the others," the first officer said. They took me down behind a line of officers, below the road toward a group of people, in a field by the river bank. As we walked toward them, shots were fired. I saw flashes of the rifles and heard the reports. They came up to the group. There were 4 officers standing together, with a man in front of them with a carabinieri on each side of him. A group of men were standing guarded by carabinieri. 4 other carabinieri stood near the questioning officers, leaning on their carbines. They were wide-hatted carabinieri. The 2 who had me shoved me in with the group waiting to be questioned. The 2 who had me shoved me in with the group waiting to be questioned. I looked at the man the officers were questioning. He was the fat, gray-haired little lieutenant colonel they had taken out of the column. The questioners had all the efficiency, coldness, and command of themselves of Italians who are firing and not being fired on. "Your brigade," he told them. "Regiment," he told them. "Why are you not with your regiment?" he told them. "Do you not know that an officer should be with his troops?" He did. That was all. Another officer spoke. "It is you, and such as you, that have let the barbarians onto our sacred soil of the fatherland." "I beg your pardon," said the lieutenant colonel. "It is because of treachery such as yours that we have lost the fruits of victory." "Have you ever been in retreat?" the lieutenant colonel asked. Italy should never retreat. We stood there in the rain and listened to this. We were facing the officers, and the prisoners stood in front and a little to one side of us. If you are going to shoot me, the lieutenant colonel said, please shoot me at once without further questioning. The questioning is stupid. He made the sign of the cross. The officers spoke together. One wrote something on a pad of paper. Abandon his troops, ordered to be shot, he said. Two carabinieri took the lieutenant colonel to the river bank. He walked in the rain, an old man with his hat off, carabinieri on either side. I did not watch them shoot him, but I heard the shots. They were questioning someone else. The officer, too, was separated from his troops. He was not allowed to make an explanation. He cried when they read the sentence from the pad of paper, and they were questioning another when they shot him. They made a point of being intent on questioning the next man, while the man who had been questioned before was being shot. In this way, there was obviously nothing they could do about it. I did not know whether I should wait to be questioned or make a break now. I was obviously a German in Italian uniform. I saw how their minds worked. If they had minds and if they worked. They were all young men, and they were saving their country. The Second Army was being reformed beyond the Tagliamento. They were executing officers of the rank of major and above who were separated from their troops. They were also dealing summarily with German agitators in Italian uniform. They wore steel helmets. Only two of us had steel helmets. Some of the carabinieri had them. The other carabinieri wore the wide hat. Airplanes, we called them. We stood in the rain and were taken out one at a time to be questioned and shot. So far they had shot everyone they had questioned. The questioners had that beautiful detachment and devotion to stern justice of men dealing in death without being in any danger of it. They were questioning a full colonel of a line regiment. 3 more officers had just been put in with us. Where was his regiment? I looked at the carabinieri. They were looking at the newcomers. The others were looking at the colonel. I ducked down, pushed between 2 men, and ran for the river, my head down. I tripped at the edge and went in with a splash. The water was very cold. I stayed under as long as I could. I could feel the current swirl me, and I stayed under until I thought I could never come up. The minute I came up, I took a breath and went down again. It was easy to stay under with so much clothing in my boots. When I came up the second time, I saw a piece of timber ahead of me and reached it and held on with one hand. I kept my head behind it and did not even look over it. I did not want to see the bank. There were shots when I ran, and shots when I came up the first time. I heard them when I was almost above the water. There were no shots now. The piece of timber swung in the current, and I held it with one hand. I looked at the bank. It seemed to be going by very fast. There was much wood in the stream. The water was very cold. We passed the brush of an island above the water. I held onto the timber with both hands and let it take me along. The shore was out of sight now. 31. You do not know how long you are in a river when the current moves rapidly, swiftly. It seems a long time, and it may be very short. The water was cold and in flood, and many things passed that had been floated off the banks when the river rose. I was lucky to have a heavy timber to hold on to, and I lay in the icy water with my chin on the wood, holding as easily as I could with both hands. I was afraid of cramps, and I hoped we would move toward the shore. We went down the river in a long curve. It was beginning to be light enough so I could see the bushes along the shoreline. There was a brush island ahead, and the current moved toward the shore. I wondered if I should take off my boots and clothes and try to swim ashore, but decided not to. I had never thought of anything but that I would reach the shore some way, and I would be in a bad position if I landed barefoot. I had to get to Mestra some way. I watched the shore come close, then swing away, then come closer again. We were floating more slowly. The shore was very close now. I could see twigs on the willow bush. The timber swung slowly so that the bank was behind me, and I knew we were in an eddy. We went slowly around. As I saw the bank again, very close now, I tried holding with one arm and kicking and swimming the timber toward the bank with the other, but I did not bring it any closer. I was afraid we would move out of the eddy, and holding with one hand, I drew up my feet so they were against the side of the timber and shoved hard toward the bank. I could see the brush, but even with my momentum and swimming as hard as I could, the current was taking me away. I thought then I would drown because of my boots, but I thrashed and fought through the water, and when I looked up, the bank was coming toward me, and I kept thrashing and swimming, in a heavy-footed panic until I reached it. I hung to the willow branch and did not have strength to pull myself up, but I knew I would not drown now. It had never occurred to me on the timber that I might drown. I felt hollow and sick in my stomach and chest from the effort, and I held to the branches and waited. When the sick feeling was gone, I pulled into the willow bushes and rested again, my arms around some brush, holding tight with my hands to the branches. Then I crawled out, pushed on through the willows and onto the bank. It was half daylight, and I saw no one. I lay flat on the bank and heard the river and the rain. After a while, I got up and started along the bank. I knew there was no bridge across the river until Ladisana. I thought I might be opposite San Vito. I began to think out what I should do. Ahead there was a ditch running into the river. I went toward it. So far I had seen no one, and I sat down by by some bushes along the bank of the ditch and took off my shoes and emptied them of water. I took off my coat, took my wallet with my papers and my money all wet in it out of the inside pocket, and then wrung the coat out. I took off my trousers and wrung them too. Then my shirt and underclothing. I slapped and rubbed myself and then dressed again. I had lost my cap. Before I put on my coat, I cut the cloth stars off my sleeves and put them inside my pocket with my money. My money was wet, but was all right. I counted it. There were 3,000 and some lyre. My clothes felt wet and clammy, and I slapped my arms to keep the circulation going. I had woven underwear, and I did not think I would catch cold if I kept moving. They had taken my pistol at the road, and I put the holster under my coat. I had no cape, and it was cold in the rain. I started up the bank of the canal. It was daylight, and the country was wet, low and dismal looking. The fields were bare and wet. A long way away, I could see a campanile rising out of the plain. I came up onto a road. Ahead, I saw some troops coming down the road. I limped along the side of the road, and they passed me and paid no attention to me. They were a machine gun detachment going up the river. I went on down the road. That day I crossed the Venetian plain. It is a low-level country, and under the rain it is even flatter. Toward the sea there are salt marshes, and very few roads. The roads all go along the river mouths to the sea, and to cross the country you must go along the paths beside the canals. I was working across the country from the north to the south, and had crossed 2 railway lines and many roads, and finally I came out to the end of the path onto a railway line where it ran beside a marsh. It was the main line from Venice to Trieste, with a high solid embankment, a solid roadbed, and double track. Down the tracks away was the flag station, and I could see soldiers on guard. Up the line there was a bridge over a stream that flowed into the marsh. I could see a guard, too, at the bridge. Crossing the fields to the north, I had seen a train pass on this railroad, visible a long way across the flat plain, and I thought a train might come from Portoguero. I watched the guards and lay down on the embankment so that I could see both ways along the track. The guard at the bridge walked away up the line toward where I lay, then turned and went back toward the bridge. I lay and was hungry and waited for the train. The one I had seen was so long that the engine moved it very slowly, and I was sure I could get aboard it. After I had almost given up hoping for one, I saw a train coming. The engine coming straight on grew larger slowly. I looked at the guard at the bridge. He was walking along the near side of the bridge, but on the other side of the tracks. That would put him out of sight when the train passed. I watched the engine come nearer. It was working hard. I could see there were many cars. I knew there would be guards on the train, and I tried to see where they were, but keeping out of sight, I could not. The engine was almost to where I was lying.
when it came opposite, working and puffing even on the level, and I saw the engineer pass. I stood up and stepped close to the passing cars. If the guards were watching, I was a less suspicious object, standing beside the track. Several close freighted cars passed. Then I saw a low, open car, of the sort they call gondolas, coming, covered with canvas. I stood until it had almost passed, then jumped and caught the rear hand rods and pulled up. I crawled down between the gondola and the shelter of the high freight car behind. I did not think anyone had seen me. I was holding to the hand rods and crouching low, my feet on the coupling. We were almost opposite the bridge. I remembered the guard. As we passed him, he looked at me. He was a boy, and his helmet was too big for him. I stared at him contemptuously, and he looked away. He thought I had something to do with the train. We were past. I saw him still looking uncomfortable, watching the other cars pass, and I stopped to see how the canvas was fastened. It had grommets and was laced down at the edge with cord. I took out my knife, cut the cord, and put my arm under. There were hard bulges under the canvas that tightened in the rain. I looked up and ahead. There was a guard on the freight car ahead, but he was looking forward. I let go of the handrails and ducked under the canvas. My forehead hit something that gave me a violent bump, and I felt blood on my face. But I crawled on in and lay flat. Then I turned around and fastened down the canvas. I was in under the canvas with guns. They smelled cleanly of oil and grease. I lay and listened to the rain on the canvas and the clicking of the car over the rails. There was a little light that came through, and I lay and looked at the guns. They had their canvas jackets on. I thought they must have been sent ahead from the Third Army. The bump of my forehead was swollen, and I stopped the bleeding by lying still and letting it coagulate. Then picked away the dried blood, except over the cut. It was nothing. I had no handkerchief, but feeling with my fingers, I washed away where the dried blood had been with rainwater that dripped from the canvas and wiped it clean with the sleeve of my coat. I did not want to look suspicious. I knew I would have to get out before they got to Mestra because they would be taking care of these guns They had no guns to lose or forget about. I was terrifically hungry. 32. Lying on the floor of the flat car with the guns beside me under the canvas, I was wet, cold, and very hungry. Finally, I rolled over and lay flat on my stomach with my head on my arms. My knee was stiff, but it had been very satisfactory. Valentini had done a fine job. I had done half the retreat on foot and swum part of the Tagliamento with his knee. It was his knee, all right. The other knee was mine. Doctors did things to you, and then it was not your body anymore. The head was mine, and the inside of the belly. It was very hungry in there. I could feel it turn over on itself. The head was mine, but not to use, not to think with, only to remember and not too much remember. I could remember Catherine, but I knew I would get crazy if I thought about her. When I was not sure yet, I would see her, so I would not think about her. Only about her a little, only about her with the car going slowly and clickingly, and some light through the canvas, and my lying with Catherine on the floor of the car. Hard as the floor of the car to lie, not thinking, only feeling, having been away too long. The clothes, wet, and floor moving only a little each time, and lonesome inside, and alone with wet clothing and hard floor for a wife. You did not love the floor of a flat car, nor guns with canvas jackets, and the smell of vaselined metal, or a canvas that rain leaked through, although it is very fine under a canvas, and pleasant with guns. But you loved someone else, whom now you knew was not even to be pretended there. You seeing now very clearly and coldly, not so coldly as clearly and emptily. You saw emptily, laying on your stomach, having been present when one army moved back and another came forward. You had lost your cars and your men, as a floor walker loses the stock of his department in a fire. There was, however, no insurance. You were out of it now. You had no more obligation. If they shot floor walkers after a fire in the department store because they spoke with an accent they had always had, then certainly the floor walkers would not be expected to return when the store opened again for business. They might seek other employment if there was any other employment and the police did not get them. Anger was washed away in the river, along with any obligation, although that ceased when the carabinieri put his hands on my collar. I would like to have the uniform off, although I did not care much about the outward forms. I had taken off the stars, but that was for convenience. It was no point of honor. I was not against them. I was through. I wished them all the luck. There were the good ones, and the brave ones, and the calm ones, the sensible ones, and they deserved it. But it was not my show any more. I wished this bloody train would get to Mestra, and I would eat and stop thinking. I would have to stop. Piani would tell them they had shot me. They went through the pockets and took the papers of the people they shot. They would not have my papers. They might call me drowned. I wondered what they would hear in the States. Dead from wounds and other causes. Good Christ, I was hungry. I wondered what had become of the priest at the mess, and Rinaldi. He was probably at Pardenon, if they had not gone further back. Well, I would never see him now. I would never see any of them now. That life was over. I did not think he had syphilis. It was not a serious disease anyway, if you took it in time, they said. But he would worry. I would worry too if I had it. Anyone would worry. I was not made to think. I was made to eat. My God, yes. Eat and drink and sleep with Catherine. Tonight, maybe. No, that was impossible. But tomorrow night. And a good meal and sheets and never going away again except together. Probably have to go damned quickly. She would go. I knew she would go. When would we go? That was something to think about. It was getting dark. I lay and thought where we would go. There were many places. And that's the end of book 3.